Hello everyone, I'm here today to do a review of Osebol by Marit Kapla and translated by Peter Graves. And this is, as the subtitle might suggest, Voices from a Swedish Village. It's about the people of Osebol, which is a small village in Sweden. And the author is from this town, so she interviewed a lot of people from there. Um, to give kind of like an overview of all the topics that affect the people in rural areas in general. And so there are discussions about nature, especially about wolves, about also the memory of villages. So, like, for example, and everyone knows everybody in a village, and so people know the history of a house in a way that if you move into an apartment in a city, normally nobody knows anything about who lived there before you, maybe like the immediate people before you, but they don't know who lived there the first time, who built the house, things like that. Whereas in a village, that is a lot more common. Um, it also has topics of the aging of the population in rural areas, so there is a lot of talk about people that work in care, people that need care, people that need hospitals, but the hospitals are obviously not in the rural areas. There is also a talk about the lack of jobs and why young people are leaving the rural areas. There is no schools also. Like in this book, the school that was closest to them was recently closed, so they had to travel like an hour to go to school. So many of the young people ended up moving to the town and living kind of almost by themselves, because otherwise they had to wake up every day at 6 in the morning and spend no time with their families anyway. So there's a lot of talks about that. Um, there is also a part about refugees. So around this area there were a number of refugees that were welcome, and there is talk about the situation of the refugees, but also like some people think that the government is giving money to these refugees, whereas there is no money for the rural people in Sweden, and that is an imbalance that needs to be fixed. Not necessarily saying the refugees have to go away, but more like we also count kind of thing. Um, so yeah, there is a lot of different aspects to this book and different topics that the book covers. The book is chunky, but it's also written in a very poetic style, and so every sort of chapter starts with I don't know if you can see a page like this, which I believe are all the houses in the village, and in this case there is one that is darker than the other ones, and that's kind of like the house, the people that that chapter is gonna be about. And then in each chapter here at the bottom you also have the name of the person or the people that live on that house and are talking, and that's like what they say. And they also have like the birth and sometimes death date of that person, because I believe that she started doing the interviews for this in like 2019, 2018, around there, and since then some of the people that she interviewed have died. So some people do have an end date, some people don't. Yeah, that's kind of like the general information about it. I really enjoyed this. I really, really loved it. I thought it was very honest and powerful, and the poetic tone is not like too poetic or too descriptive. It's just, yeah, about things that matter actually. So, for example, to give you an idea of that, I'm going to write. I'm going to read a passage of it. They want to cut back by one firefighter per station. At present, there are 3 of us for call out. 5 years ago, there were 5. That made things really safe. Straight after it went down to 4, then to 3. Now they want to cut one more, so there will only be 2 to respond call-outs. It will be impossible to do anything worthwhile. You have to stop the traffic. That's not easy, as drivers just don't understand. I will reckon that almost everyone has come close to being knocked down at least once or more at roadside call-outs. People drive on past, even when there is a stoplight. They're in a hurry. You can imagine how many people would suffer if an accident happened and a firefighter was injured or killed during call-out by a motorist ignoring traffic conditions. With only 2 firefighters on call, it just won't work. So that's kind of like the tone, and this particular one was about a woman that was a firefighter, and as you can understand, they were cutting the number of firefighters, but there are also others about people complaining about schools or about like the care for old people or all kinds of things. It's kind of like almost like a complaint session for other people in the town, but there are also some positive things. But yeah, it's yeah, I think it's very honest. And personally, I'm not um, a very rural person. I grew up in a town. I live in a city. I like living in a city. I like the accessibility and the expansive culture that is here, and the accessibility to travel and all of those things. But I do value that there are people that prefer to live in rural areas, and that is not always the easiest thing because of all these roadblocks that they have, lacks of jobs, lacks of infrastructure, schools, hospitals, all of these things makes living in rural areas a lot more difficult on a day-to-day basis. And I think that we should respect that these people also have the right to live there and not try to just like push everyone into the city. It's fine that people want to live in cities, but not everyone does. And I think the life of rural people shouldn't be harder just because of the place they live in. And so, in that sense, I think that this book is quite international because I think that's a phenomenon that is happening everywhere. People moving away from rural areas into cities, and I don't think that's for everybody, and I don't think that's healthy for a society that everyone lives in a city. So I really think that this is very relevant, and it's also not a topic that I have seen very often. When I read books about villages, it's normally about like the quaint essence of a village and the day-to-day life more than like the issues and the political things going on in villages. And so I think this was very useful for me to relate to that kind of perspective, and very honest and informative about it, but also like very enjoyable to read. I think also in terms of the writing style, it was very innovative with like the poetic things and like the different details about the graphics and all of that. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and don't get scared by the size. It's really a quick read. I think if you actually like remove all the white space on this, it's probably like more like a 300-page book. So yeah, it reads very fast, and it's very really worth it, I think. So yeah, let me know if you want to pick this up, if I convince you, or if you have already read it, we can chat in the comments about it. And until next video, bye.